Hey, folks, I'm back. It's been a while. Been wrapped up in some family stuff, helping the family out with some different things. All good, no problems. And mine's been on other things, and as much as my time and my focus. And yeah, glad to be back. Got a few things we're going to get into here, but uh, in this video. But before I go there, thing I wanted to throw at you all, and just gonna pull up the screen share here. See a series of words here on the screen. And based on past experience, everyone is going to get one of these, the pronunciation of one of these words wrong. Everyone. You got licked, tricked, kicked. So we got Licked, Tricked, Kicked, Wicked, so on and so forth. You can see it all in front of you there. Now, I ran this same thing by I was on a call. There's some teachers, and I think there's 6 or 7 school teachers. These are school teachers. Okay, so I spelled this out, and I said, well, what does Licked say? They said licked. I said, okay, what about Tricked or tricked? And Kicked, they said kicked. Wicked, they said wicked. That's not how you pronounce that word. It's wicked. So I says to them, I says, okay, so you look at the spelling of all of these, they're all the same, and then you got the all end in ed, and I said, so is there some rule of grammar that the pronunciation of this word would change from all these other words, with respect to the ed on the end of it? And they said no. So the point being is that 8 school teachers, or however many were on that call, got this wrong, as does everybody else. It's not wicked. It is not wicked. It's wicked. Just like licked. It's not licked, not tricked, it's not kicked, it's not wicked, it's wicked. That has to do with Lucifer and the light bearer, wicked. Not even going there. That shows there's things to be learned from this, and that's one is how brain dead we are. We've been deceived. Where did that come from? Well, why would people say that's wicked? Or pardon me, wicked? We look at all these other words, and we're going to look at that one there and say wicked, because that's what we've been told, right? We've been taught to think that way. School teachers included. School teachers, yep, that's wicked, but it's wicked. So we're brain dead, we're deceived, and we're brain dead, because you think somewhere along the way somebody would have thought, well, just a second here, if this is licked and this is tricked and this is kicked, and why the heck is that wicked? Why would that be wicked? It makes no sense. And actually come to their own conclusion without any interference, or just, that's not how you don't pronounce that wicked. Or wicked, it's wicked, clearly. And there is no rule of grammar that changes the pronunciation of that word to wicked. It's wicked. It is wicked. So, one is you got to ask yourself, so what else are we being taught incorrectly? I think most of us kind of get a pretty good idea and answer on that, but how much is that playing in our beingness and our interpretation of things and our perception of reality and stuff? That's just one word here. That what else it has been done to our minds, and why do we not pick up on this on our own to say, well, just a second, teach. You keep telling me that this is wicked, but what's the rule of grammar that the pronunciation of this changes? Wouldn't it be wicked, like licked, tricked, kicked, picked, clicked, flicked? Wicked? Are you kidding me? So anyhow, that's not the main focus of this video, not at all, but I wanted to show how we been deceived, but yet how at the same time how brain dead we are, that we couldn't figure that out for ourselves. We all jump on the bandwagon everywhere you look now. You see it on t-shirts, I'm wicked and all that. People, it's wicked. what do you got? How come you're wicked? What do you mean you're wicked? That's what it says. It's not wicked. I'm going to move on now, so I'm going to put a kibosh on the screen share here and put a little kibosh on this. I'm doing this on Zoom for recording that screen share there, and then we're going to go to the other, and I'll just splice this into the other video. We'll carry on with the video. It'll be a little bit longer than usual, but it is what it is. Be back shortly. All right, moving on. I remind you, precious ones, an identity is not what you are, but what you are of. I'm saying this again because some people it's not sinking in for some people. They're still talking about the all cap versus the upper lowercase. It makes no difference. Look, people, whether a name is in all caps or proper noun format matters not. A name is how a thing is known. Whether it's all caps or upper lowercase makes no difference. It's how a thing is known. Accept it. The name, be it John Smith, proper noun, upper lowercase, or John Smith, all caps, it can be of God or it can be of Canada. If it's of God, that's your identity. If it's of Canada and you've used the birth certificate as personal identification, that's your identity. Now you're a Canadian man. See? Change of identity. It has nothing to do whatsoever whether it's all caps or upper lowercase. In other words, the name on the certificate of live birth that was put there by your mom or dad is of God. All caps or proper noun. In fact, in the statement of birth form for province of Ontario, it states right on there that the name on the birth certificate is going to go on there exactly as it is on the certificate of live birth or statement of live birth. Exactly. So if it's upper lowercase on the statement of live birth, it's upper lowercase on the birth certificate. If it's all caps in the statement of live birth, it's all caps in the birth certificate. Has nothing to do with the style or the format of the name. Nothing. So anyhow, the name on the registration of birth document is of God. All caps are proper noun. But then they put the same name on the birth certificate, which is a government-issued identity document, which is defined in the Canadian Criminal Code, by the way, what an identity document is. When you use that birth certificate as personal identification, that constitutes a change of identity. It is then that you are known by that name to be a person of the country of issue. Example, of Canada, of the United States. So the transition took place when you got that birth certificate and used it as personal identification, new identity of Canada. All caps or upper lowercase makes no difference. Over here on the statement of live birth, it's of God. On the birth certificate, it's of Canada or Ontario, Canada, or the state, country, whatever. So I told you, when an application was made for a birth certificate, the information was released to the minister so they could issue a birth certificate and a new identity. This is the attorney thing we talked about. In other words, it is not about the name, all cap or proper noun, but who or what you are of. That's the identity. In other words, the birth name, be it all caps or proper noun John Paul Smith on the registration, is of God, but the same name on the birth certificate you use is of Canada, or the country that issued the birth certificate. This, by the way, all this information we're sharing here is not limited to Canada. I think I've said this before. I'll say it again. This applies pretty much around the world. Just people got to make adjustments for the country, the laws, rules, and regulations where you're at. But other than that, it's applicable as far as I know everywhere except maybe in dictatorships. I can't speak for China. I know nothing about China in the government perspective. It is by that name a person is known. In other words, it can be a man known by the name John Paul Smith or a person known by the name John Paul Smith. And again, the style and how you see the name makes no difference. Soon as one returns, it will be a person. The person will be known by that name to be the person or as the person. You did it and you can fix it. Now, we're going to go down a slippery slope here of selfishness and how it plays into the legal system. I cannot go into the details about selfishness and what it is. It's a go within or go without thing. I can and will say selfishness is a concept. I've already stated previously it's the root of all evil. Understand the concept and then apply it how you operate or interface with the legal system. For example, I claim to own property I do not actually own. If that is true, what may the repercussions be? And why do I do that? Why do I claim something is mine that's not mine? Where's that coming from? Where's that concept coming from? Now, if you, for example, have done the witness stand thing that we've talked about in our videos and got it in evidence on the record, you are not the person, however you get there, or that you're the man, whatever that looks like at the end of the day. Remember, the judge can't intimidate you here. They're not supposed to, and there's consequences if he does. Let me put it that way. When you've done that successfully on the witness stand, and the person, as far as concerns you, is dissolved out of existence. At that point, the name, all caps, or John Paul Smith, or upper lowercase John Paul Smith, and all the records, so on and so forth, it means it is the means by which a man is known. Now, we're going to move on to sticking with the selfishness thing here, being the root of all evil in the concept of selfishness, and again, how it plays in the legal system, that Wonderland system. Pretty sure I mentioned this before. Anyhow, I'll mention it again. A friend of mine up north in Northern Ontario was being audited by the Canada Revenue Agency. 2 agents were at his home. He pulled out the birth certificate and got them to agree that this is Her Majesty's business. I'm talking about the birth certificate now, okay? That's issued. It's a government issue, not the certificate of live birth. I'm talking about the birth certificate of the country, right? So they agreed that, yes, that's Her Majesty's business. And so he then says, well, you do the books. It's Her Majesty's business, right? Not my business. You just agreed it's her business, not my business. So you do the books. And they took the books and they did the books. 6 months or so later, he gets a phone call from his accountant saying that he has received the books back, his financials from Canada Revenue Agency, but he's not supposed to give them to my friend. That's weird. He's not supposed to give the books back to my friend. They've gone to a licensed accountant, and they're not supposed to give them to my friend. Why would that be? Oh, it's Her Majesty's business, and I'm not a licensed accountant, but he is. He's licensed by Her Majesty to do the books. They've also got legal representation. They're licensed, to represent the Crown, the Queen, so on and so forth, the country, whatever. I'm not talking your private lawyers. So you start thinking about this. If it's their business and there's things that I shouldn't be doing, that maybe I'm doing this, trespassing into that, and that's part of what the problem is. Anyhow, to carry on with that friend up north, the day after he got the phone call from his accountant about having received his books back, or the books back, he got a phone call from the Privacy Commissioner of Canada, and the question to him was, we need to know who you are. And he replied, I'm an ally of Her Majesty. And the Privacy Commissioner guy says, that's good enough for us. Ally of Her Majesty. Keep that in mind. Another friend in his communication in 2008 stopped CRA from coming at him. He was at the point of threatening legal action. He fired off a letter. Basically, he wrote, ending all commercial business, referencing again the birth certificate of the country now, right? Not of you, not of God, of the country, of the fiction. That any and all commercial business done in this name, the John Paul Smith, on the birth certificate, that identity, is done for Ontario or Canada, whichever is applicable, in right of Ontario or in right of Canada, whichever is applicable. Bang, stopped. He also added to that he surrendered claim to the money, so there would be no debt. Now, if you look at what both of these gentlemen did, first thing that jumps out is, you got to ask yourself, as you notice, there was no selfishness in what they were doing here. Quite frankly, the opposite. But there was no me in this equation, what these two gentlemen did. It's important, it's significant. As I've said, with respect to the reclaiming securities information, there are many roads one can take. You can create your own path. You don't have to follow the ones that we've laid out. It's not necessary. You can think for yourself and get in your comfort zone, and how do you see the world? How do you want to see the world? This is all part of it, right? I think I stated in one of our videos here on YouTube that claiming for the money, going for recoupment, would likely be viewed by then the state, the Crown, the judge, or government as messing with their revenue stream. Now, there's nothing that those two gentlemen did that was messing with their revenue stream. Quite the contrary. Quite the opposite. And in both cases, well, I explained the outcome there. A friend up north no longer has to do the books. They've acknowledged it's not his business, it's for the Majesty, it's Her Majesty's business, and so he says, then you do the books. So in other words, everything he's doing to the name on the birth certificate is being done for Her Majesty. Same as the other fella. So anyhow, I know I stated that at least during one of our Zoom meetings with respect to the going for recoupment and messing with the revenue stream. This is where the resistance is. They perceive such action as adversarial. Remember, you all consider like a human resource here, a natural, they call it human resources, but if you think of natural resources, and they've been going after natural resources on the planet for eons, everybody does. You see, if there's gold in them Nar Hills, you know, people are going to flock to them Nar Hills to rape the hills of the resources, in that case, the gold. Well, here we are, they call it natural resources, but, or human resources, just think of us as natural resources. They need us, no doubt about it. And this, anyhow, this is where the resistance is. This is where they perceive such action as adversarial, because here you are using a business, Her Majesty's business, for your own profit and gain, when it's not your business. You see, the other guys put it in the proper perspective. If you think about it and accept it and consider it, remember, love is the fulfillment of the law here. There's nothing adversarial about it whatsoever. There's nothing to resist. Yeah, it's Her Majesty's business. Finally, somebody recognized that and is going to say, okay, well, then Her Majesty should do her books, and she's got licensed accounts for that. And if legal situations arise, she's got licensed legal representation for that. I'm not talking about the guys at the street level with respect to lawyers. They got attorneys general, right, and of the country and of the states. So that's your government's representation. That's the Queen's representation, legal representation specifically. So, I'm not saying you're not with the right to make the claim for the money or the recoupment, but I did offer other suggestions, and I've been offering it quite a while now. Subtle hints of other methods that are not adversarial. I mentioned what the Law Commission of Canada wrote. Consent by assent is obtained by appealing to the slothful greed of the individual, by appealing to the slothful greed of the individual. And I get it all out there. You don't see yourselves as slothful, greedy individuals, but there's a much bigger picture going on here that you got to accept for a second. Maybe I am. I've harped on the selfishness is the root of all evil. What do you think the opposite of selfishness is? What is it that fulfills the law? Look, people, some people, they want the money and the property. They're not thinking here. You cannot have both, and you cannot take anything of substance with you when you leave this world. Think about these things. So why are you really here? In times gone by, when gold itself, physical gold, was the money, you could not trade your gold, being your property, for the property of another, a farm, let's say, and keep the gold. You can't have both, okay? You cannot have the home and the gold. You cannot have the home and the money. One or the other. Now, what is your interest? My interest is the substance, food, clothing, and housing, right? That's for people. Now, the financial system, the government system, they want the money. But yeah, people actually think that I can have the house and the money. You know, I know I've shared this story before, and I'll say it again. A friend of mine in London, Ontario, here has a conversation with the lawyer. It came out that the lawyer admitted that, my friend, we know you do not own the house, but who gets the money? The issue was who gets the money? Well, you sell the house, you think it's your house, and you get the money, right? So that's who gets the money. But that was the thing, who gets the money? We know you do not own the house, but who gets the money? Anyhow, you might want to read 2 Corinthians 8 in the Holy Bible. I'm talking the older Bibles, not the newer ones, if you can get the older ones. Probably King James Bible around 2000, something like that, or older. But yeah, 2 Corinthians 8 in the Bible for some insight what I'm talking about here. You can read that and find out what's in there. You know, I want to show you here, or explain to you here, who owns the property in Canada. You can check this, who owns the property in the country you're at. Anyhow, the land of Canada. Now remember, we're talking Canada. That's a fictional place now, right? So when it's talk about land of Canada, we're not talking the earth that God created. That's something different they're talking about here. It's all fiction, right? Because there is no Canada. It's all make-believe. The law of the land, Constitution's law of the land, of fiction land. But anyhow, the land of Canada is solely owned by Queen Elizabeth II, who was also the head of state. Now, when it's God's land, everything belongs to God, right? When it's Queen's land, it's Canada's land, which Queen owns, then it's Queen's land. Queen's land. Just want to skip to the point here. The Canadian Act has no provision for any Canadian to own physical land in Canada. There it is. The Canadian Act has no provision for any Canadian fictional being to own physical land in Canada, another fictional being. But if you want to play in that world, that's the way it is. So basically it all belongs to, in that world, the queen is the god. That's why the queen is the god. She owns everything, right? And over here in God's kingdom, he created heaven and earth and said, let there be light, and all that sort of, God said, there was the word, and God was the word. God said, let there be light, poof, there's light, so God is light. And all this other stuff. Well, in the fictional world, that's the queen. So I've been, trying to tell you that you do not own property in Canada. You do, but you don't. So if you're in Canada, you're Canadian, then you don't want to be arguing about who owns the property because it's not you. Stupid going, they're trying to take my house. Well, if it's Canadian house and you're a Canadian woman or Canadian man, that's not your house. You just want to talk to the owner. Like, what do you mean debt? There shouldn't be a debt here then. If you're not the owner and the other, Their Majesty's the owner, then there's no reason for debt to be there. But anyhow, that's who's responsible for the debt, not you, but you want to fight about it, well, then it's your debt. What a mess. So anyhow, you do not own property in Canada or the country. You do, but you don't. In other words, the real owner does own property, but doesn't. Little homework for you. Figure out how that can be. The real owner owns property in Canada, but doesn't. So I want to go back to my friend, what he said up north there. Just the key again is that he said, I am an ally of Her Majesty, and the commissioner, the privacy commissioner for Canada said, that's good enough for us. Now this same gentleman, by the way, comes from a line of actual pirates, and he explained to me the history of pirates. He has the Pirates Code, the actual, I don't mean the original draft, but a copy of it, passed down by his family. And the pirates and the British Navy came to terms a long time ago because they were fighting each other and pirates were getting some of the property. So they came to terms where the British Navy and the pirates would not attack each other, but they would share in the bounty of whatever bounty they got from other places, however they got it. So they came to peace. They came to terms. They came to peace. And that's what I'm trying to get at here is the fellow up north there. I'm an ally of Her Majesty. So you come to peace, right? If you're an ally of Her Majesty, then you're not at war with Her Majesty. So, yep, he's an ally of Her Majesty. That's good enough for us. So there you go. Could it be the enemies of the state, the adversaries, are the selfish ones? Remember, the Queen punishes evildoers. I'm just putting the words out there. It's all subject to interpretation. I get it. I get it. People have been screwed over, but maybe we're screwing ourselves. And again, back to the I Am teachings, they explain it very well, and this is my interpretation of that. You may have heard of the term manufactured lack. We have all blamed them out there for that. Well, I propose the selfishness of the people is manufacturing the lack. Cause and effect, we reap what we sow. Pretty straightforward stuff, really. Anyhow, to wrap up what I'm suggesting in this video is you can look or consider looking for a workaround so you're not considered a threat to the revenue stream, so you're not considered an adversary, so there's no resistance, so you come to peace and everybody gets along. And that 2 Corinthians 8 from the Bible there may give you a little bit of insight into what I'm talking about here. Again, I'm not preaching. I'm not telling people what to do. None of that. Floating some information out there, and people, when you hear stuff in these videos and you go out there and you try stuff based on what you heard in these videos and only these videos, you're a fool. I've said there's more to it. You got to study and put the time and effort into it to see the bigger picture. Like when I've talked about going to the court and doing the courtroom stuff, that comes from about, I was trying to think of that today, attorney of record and getting on the witness stand, that sort of thing, from about, I'm going to say 30, 40, 50 hours of other webinar video. So without that, you only get a little teeny piece of the picture, and if you're only running with a little teeny piece of the picture, not trying to close in the gaps for yourself and come up with a workable strategy, you're wasting your time. Then you're going to go in there and you're going to fail, and you're going to come out, oh, I tried that and it didn't work. Well, no, you didn't try. If you didn't put in the time and the effort, you're just throwing snowballs at the wall. You didn't try anything. You learned, but you didn't try anything. Anyhow, I believe that's it. Just going to pause this for a moment and make sure I'm done what I said what I came to say. Thanks. So yeah, again, it's just this proposition here that people take a little bit bigger look at this concept of selfishness and what is the opposite of selfishness. Am I in this for me or in this for everybody? And like I say, I get it. We all get this feeling that we've been screwed. But you may come to the realization, no, as long as I hold that belief, then I will continue to be screwed, because the thing is, I'm the one I'm waiting for. I'm my savior. Just make a few changes in my beingness, my choices, and I'll have peace. I don't have to have the money. As long as I got the food, clothing, and housing, what do I need the money for? That's the trustee's function, right? And I've said often, the property belongs to the estate, and the estate is the ultimate security, and that is held in trust. Love you. God bless. Hope you get something out of this. Get you thinking at least. And once again, do not run out and try stuff based on simply what you're hearing this or any other of the videos here. There's a culmination there. There's some thought has to go into it. Go outside and sit on that rock and think it through. Pay attention to how they're acting in the courts and stuff like this, what you're up against. Don't go in there blind, unprepared. Nobody can predict what's going to go on in that place. That's why you want to have a good understanding of the principles and the concept, and for sure get the fear out. God bless. Love you. Light of God never fails. Not possible. Till next time. Something else I wanted to just thought of here to share with you. I have a court case here from the Supreme Court of Canada from 1916. It's the Trustees and Guarantee Company are the defendants / appellants, and His Majesty the King the plaintiff / respondent. This is on appeal from the Exchequer Court of Canada. Now what they're talking about in here, this is similar to the Mercer versus the Attorney General of Ontario case, also a Supreme Court of Canada case that was held about 40 years before this. And the key part here is that if you're Canadian, or a subject of Her Majesty, and the Canadian would be a subject of Her Majesty, then you hold land superior of another lord, and that lord, of course, would be Her Majesty. That's your God. That's the whole point of this, right? Is God your government, or is government your God? So the subjects, again, back to Her Majesty owns the land in Canada. Remember, we're talking in Canada, it's all fiction, but there it is. It's what you believe, right? So if you think you're walking on Canadian soil, then you are. If you know you're on God's soil, then you are. So, as a Canadian, then you, and again, Her Majesty owns the land in Canada, and Canadians have no ownership rights whatsoever to the land in Canada as a Canadian. Well, a Canadian can only be a Canadian. Sorry. But anyhow, yeah, so Canadians hold that land of a superior lord, and that superior lord is Her Majesty. That's the term, right? That's your new God, your new king. But something I want to read from this case here is, a subject therefore hath only the usufruct, and not the absolute property of the soil. Again, a subject of Her Majesty, I'm adding that, therefore hath only the usufruct, and not the absolute property of the soil. So in other words, you don't own the land, but you're entitled to the profits. And that's where you want to take a serious look at that, or I propose. And that's on page 20 of this document. Is it page 20? This case? Well, it's actually page 126. It's page 20 in the PDF. I'm not sure how that works. But there's a lot of stuff. There's a lot of meat in here, but that's the main point of this, is that the subject, Canadians, hath only the usufruct, and not the absolute property of the soil. So you hold land that belongs to Her Majesty, you have use of that land that belongs to Her Majesty, you don't own it, but you're entitled to the profits. And of course, there's one string attached in exchange for all of this, is you have you owe a service to your superior lord, the queen. In other words, you better pay it. Well, let me just read this here. In contradiction to Lodium, which latter the writers on this subject define to be every man's own land, which he possesseth merely in his own right, without owing any rent or service to any superior. So as a Canadian, you hold the land as usufruct. Yep, you're entitled to the profits, but you owe a service to the superior, being the queen. In other words, you better pay your taxes, or they will take it from you. But yeah, that's a court case, and I got that from, I don't remember how long I've had that, but probably going back to 2011, or pardon me, 2012, 2013. But that's just to add a little piece of what's going on here. So again, that's if you're Canadian. Keep in mind whose business it is. It's all relevant. Yep, God bless, love you. Light of God never fails. Till we meet again. Thanks.